Senator Thune from the great state of South Dakota. He knows that when you do the right thing, the political benefits will follow because the people will appreciate you. He joins us now. Have you ever gotten such a suck-up introduction as that one, Senator Thune? I mean, that was just over the top.
Thank you, Laura. It was very nice. And by the way, as I've told you before, Saturday is our state holiday here in South Dakota. It's the opening day of pheasant season.
Woo!
And once again, you're not here.
Well,
so,
the invitation obviously was it was lost. It was lost with the Obama Ebola protocols. You always say, "Well, I'll invite you," and then every year goes by. Oh, you should be there in 24 hours. Oh, thanks for the advance notice.
It's an open invitation.
Yeah. Well, I do want to come, and I've never, I've only been to South Dakota once, and I think it was for one event. Maybe it was with you or for you. I can't remember. It was so long ago.
It was.
It's
yeah,
it's
you were out here 10 years ago.
That's right.
You're due for a trip back. I'll make a specific invite.
Thank you.
Time, so.
A gilded envelope, please. Delivered by beautiful white doves, dropped right in my lap, please.
Senator,
it's great to talk to you. First of all, thanks so much for coming on the
great
show.
We
have some political news we want to talk to you about in South Dakota. But before we do, you and your colleague Congressman Schuster have written a letter to the president about this Ebola situation, which is clearly spiraling out of control. The president tried to calm everybody's fears yesterday. He canceled a fundraiser, which that must be serious if he's canceling a fundraiser. But what does your letter say, and what do you hope it will accomplish?
Well, I know he'll get serious when he starts canceling golf games.
Yeah.
But,
that's true. 11th hole.
We'll
have a press conference on the 11th hole.
Well, I think that what we think needs to happen, Laura, is that there are a lot of domestic airport screenings that are going on. That's a positive step. Obviously, should be expanded, but thermal screening of arriving passengers isn't 100% effective for a disease that can incubate for up to 21 days before you start displaying any symptoms. And so we think, our government, U.S. officials ought to take every precaution to stop Ebola from entering the U.S. again, and that a travel ban is a logical next step. And so the president has the authority to do that. We're asking him to do that, and at least to do it for 30 days. We can reevaluate it, but it'll give CDC and the others some time to get on top of this thing and to continue to develop a vaccine. But right now, I just think there's a lot of concern around the country, and I think most Americans look at this and say, well, why aren't we doing more to prevent this from coming into the country in the first place?
67% of Americans in the Washington Post ABC poll say to shut down air transit from West Africa. It doesn't mean we stop giving,
right.
humanitarian help. And everyone says, well, you can't shut down air travel because that would make it harder to fight the disease. That's the most ridiculous thing ever. We've got to stop it here. That's our responsibility. Your responsibility as Senator, Obama's, Congress's. Right. Keep the American people safe first. And then at the same time, we're certainly doing more than any other country in the face of the planet to help the people there. But I have suggested that Congress, I know we're going to have a subcommittee hearing on Capitol Hill. Frieden and Fauci are going to testify. But shouldn't Congress come back into session? I know you can't control what Harry Reid does. You're in the Senate. But shouldn't John Boehner convene a congressional session to at least pass legislation? Because we know the president will not do this.
And I guess you pointed out there is a hearing today. The House is they're going to have CDC and NIH and a bunch of folks up there, and hopefully, I don't know what comes out of that. But I guess what we're saying is, and there's no way, in my opinion, that Harry Reid is going to try and call back a bunch of Senate Democrats that are out there trying to protect their own jobs.
Then we call him out for it,
this.
Senator. Then when he refuses to come back into session for political purposes or because he wants to stay in the campaign trail, then Republicans are even on a higher, I think, legislative and moral ground to say, we are doing our job, you refuse to do your job.
It would be nice for once to see the president, however, use the authority he has. This guy,
he's not going to do it.
It doesn't matter. Well, there's just whether it's IRS or VA or, website rollout, there's just a competence, a basic competence the American people expect. And the president has the authority, and we've researched this pretty carefully. All he has to do is exercise it. And it seems to most, I think, Americans, a logical next step to do this. Now, I suppose, Congress could order him to do that, but
pass legislation, make him veto it. Pass legislation. Well, Harry won't. Let's say Harry doesn't want to, even though 67%, including a majority of African Americans, majority of Democrats, I believe now, in most polls show that they also want a travel ban. I mean, his own constituents want a travel ban, at least till we get a handle on this disease. All I'm saying is, and look, you can't speak for the House. I get that. You don't want to criticize Boehner. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I like John. I do. I like him. But come on. We want leadership. At least you're trying to do what you can do in the Senate, but we need a Congress who stands up and says, you have a phone and a pen, you're not using it, and when you should. We have legislative power. We have power of the purse, and we have legislative authority, and we're going to exercise it. I just think that's a win-win for everybody.
Well, and it's serious business. And again, you're right. I can't speak for the House, and I know where the Senate Democrats will be on this, and that will be where they usually are, and that's defending the administration. But again, I mean, this is a clear prerogative, authority the President of the United States has. It's another opportunity for him to exercise leadership on an issue that's very, very serious for this country, and all we're saying is do it. I mean, just do what everybody else clearly recognizes needs to be done. And, if this was an outbreak in this country, we'd be isolating it. We'd be quarantining it.
Oh, my goodness.
There's two ways of dealing with it. You got a vaccine or you got a quarantine. And so we ought to be isolating it, and we're not, taking the necessary steps to do that.
Let's move on to accountability here for this. I mean, the president blamed the intelligence community and James Clapper 10 days ago or so for underestimating ISIS. He threw Clapper under the bus, and now we have Frieden, Tom Frieden. Again, this is not personal. I don't know Tom Frieden. He could be the nicest guy ever. But in two instances where American healthcare workers, both happen to be female, contracted the virus, he rushed out to blame them. Protocols weren't followed. Turns out that wasn't accurate. And number two, because the protocols weren't in place. Number two, yesterday, he said she shouldn't have flown. The second victim, Ms. Vinson, turns out she asked the CDC if she could fly. They said yes. So both instances, Tom Frieden rushed out to blame the American victims. In both instances, he's wrong. And that's just one of the few instances where he's wrong. Should he remain, given the crisis and confidence we have, at the head of the CDC, given all the things he has gotten wrong and all the blame shifting he's done?
Well, I mean, ultimately, again, that's a judgment that the president has to make.
But what do you think? Would you hire this guy to head the CDC, given what he's done?
I think there have been a lot of examples through the current administration where people should have gone a long time before they did. And until they become a major political liability for the president, he doesn't do anything about it.
Right, but this is where I want John Thune. Would you hire this guy to run your campaign, let alone be head of the CDC?
Well, no. But there, look, this is the president gets out, and as he does on so many occasions, and gives these hard, absolute assurances that everything's under control. And I think what people are finding is his reassurances aren't very reassuring. And the president shouldn't get out there and issue red lines and offer these blanket assurances then if it comes out that it's not the case, then somebody has to be held accountable. And if he wants to blame the CDC, then he clearly ought to take steps.
We can't fire him. I mean, we tried to fire him in 2012.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, he should take corrective steps and get people in there who can fix these things. And there were.
I'll take that as a yes. He should be fired.
Okay.
Okay, Counselor. All right. Everyone thinks that. So if you say that, it's really not news. But it's just like pretty much everyone else has come on the show from Congress.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I ultimately think the buck stops with the president, and the president's in a position to do something about all this, Laura.
Yeah.
So I'm always somebody's pretty deferential when a president appoints his team. But
people
there's so many
dying,
examples throughout the course of his administration where people have needed to go, and he didn't take the step when he needed to.
We're talking to Senator John Thune here on the Laura Ingraham Show, and Senator, a lot of people emailing and tweeting in during this interview saying like the thermal screenings and all that, which we know that doesn't help when someone's not on the honor system when they decide to lie. But there could be, maybe a few people might be stopped from coming into the country because of temperatures and so forth. What about our border, where we have now apparently concerns about new waves of people coming in because now messages being sent into Central America, maybe Mexico, that there could be some type of immigration deal passed after this midterm election cycle. And so we could see new waves of people. We still have thousands of people crossing our border illegally. Should be there's some type of screening done at the legal points of entry at our border where people can walk through those checks.
Well, and I think that's something that we're asking. Not only we're asking Homeland Security and DOT to tell us what they plan to do to stop that. And that was part of the letter that Schuster and I sent was, how do you at the border, at the ports of entry, what are we going to do to prevent people who might be carrying the disease to get into the country? And and if the president, as you've mentioned, there's been this speculation, and of course I don't think he's denied it, that after the election he's going to do something more on the immigration issue, on the border issue, and that would be an outrage,
a total outrage,
right after an election, absolutely. We've got to do everything we can in Congress to stop that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because the American people are dead set against a flood of new, cheap labor into this country, and a flood perhaps of new TB cases. We're worried about some possible connection to enterovirus, to illegal immigrants crossing the border, et cetera, et cetera. Interesting piece in U.S. News today. The GOP is winning the immigration debate. And when they say the GOP, they're talking about people who want strong border enforcement and focusing on American jobs and American opportunities first. You might want to have your staff pull that for you. It's fascinating, given what a lot of people said after the 2012 election about how immigration is a loser for the GOP. It's actually a decisive and positive benefit for the GOP. And finally, in South Dakota, are you surprised the Senate race is as close as it is? I mean, old Larry Pressler, he's now an independent, and he's running as an independent, might muck up the system for Governor Mike Rounds, who wants that Senate seat against Democrat candidate Whalen. What's happening there?
That has been a complicating factor, of course, but I think that's starting. I think Larry is starting to drop. And the problem, Laura, is that Mike Rounds, to his credit, is a genuinely nice guy who didn't believe that he had to punch back when they started punching him. And these guys have been attacking him with negative ads now for months. And so he's on offense, and I think this thing we're getting back in control here. I think Mike will take control of this race and win. Mm-hmm. But there's certain element of uncertainty when you have a four-way race and a former Republican senator running as an independent.
Yeah, well, and I think we see this trend in Europe, right, with independent candidates and independent parties challenging the establishment when the establishment doesn't do what the people want year after year after year. So I just think it's a cautionary tale for the GOP. And look, unless you start doing stuff and really you're perceived by the people to be really swinging for the fences for them, then you're going to have these candidates pop up, maybe more often than we've even seen in this election, and that could really mess things up.
Well, and I think we have to take a lesson and a message from what the electorate is saying, and that is, and I think we do. I think we've got to be bold, and if we get the majorities in both houses, we've got to lead. Yep. And we may not get any cooperation from the White House, but we've got to demonstrate to the American people that we've got an agenda and we want to take the country in a different direction.
We're going to let Senator Thune get back into his thermal camouflage wear now. I think that orange reflective hat you're wearing right now. Oh, it's so cute on you. I think it looks great.
You would look really good in it, Laura.
I love camo, but usually I try to revive the animals once they're shot. I did that with Boone Pickens. I tried to revive the doves and the quail, and Santorum was with me shooting. He's like, "Stop it! The bird is dead. What are you doing? It's still flapping around." And oh no, I'm just the worst at hunting. We really appreciate it, Senator. Thanks so much.